The Ottoman Emirate, Civil War and Recovery. In 1417, the Venetians were alarmed to hear that an Ottoman force had seized Vlora on the Adriatic coast from Rugina, the Lady of Valona, and feared that Ottoman ships might appear in the Adriatic to harry Venetian commerce. Instead, in the same year, Hamza Pasha conquered Gjirokastër, the stronghold of the Zenevis clan, Vlora and Gjirokastër together giving the Sultan a substantial territory in southern Albania. This was in 1418. In the same year Mehmed led in person an expedition against Murcia of Wallachia, forcing him into submission and occupying the fortresses which controlled the crossing points on the Danube. In 1421, Mehmed died. His son, Murad II, 1421-51, did not, however, take possession of an undivided realm. In order to exploit the uncertainties of the succession, the Byzantine Emperor Manuel II released Murad's uncle, Mustafa, from custody in Thessaloniki, and it was to take vengeance on the emperor for this act that in 1422 Murad laid siege to Constantinople. The siege lasted until September, when the Sultan withdrew, not so much in despair at Byzantine resistance, as in consequence of renewed dynastic strife. The cause was the appearance in October 1422 of his younger brother Little Mustafa, and it was only after his defeat that Murad could turn against external enemies. During the time of Murad's struggles with the two Mustafas, Dracul, the voivoda of Wallachia, had crossed the Danube and harried Ottoman Rumelia. At the same time, Isfendiarulu of Sinop had recovered the territories in Kastamonu which Mehmed I had seized. After the death of the younger Mustafa, Murad personally led his army to Kastamonu to recover the lost territory and its copper mines, while a Rumelian marcher lord led a destructive expedition into Wallachia. The outcome of both campaigns was to reduce both Dracul and Isfendiarulu to vassalage, with Murad marrying an Isfendiarid princess. These campaigns restored stability to Murad's realms, and within 20 years he had, with the exception of Karaman and the upper Euphrates Valley, recovered the territories lost after the Battle of Ankara. The most significant loss in Europe at this time had been Thessaloniki and, in 1422, Murad's forces blockaded the city. A year later, the Byzantines could no longer withstand the assault and ceded Thessaloniki to Venice. In the same year, a series of raids into the Peloponnesos by the Turkish marcher Lord Turahan reminded the Christian signatories of the 1403 Treaty of Gallipoli that their political advantage over the Ottomans had evaporated. While Thessaloniki was under siege, Murad directed his forces against the remaining emirates of western Anatolia. In 1424, he sent an army against Junid, the lord of Aden, obliging him to take refuge in a coastal fortress and to seek assistance from the Venetians in Thessaloniki and from Karaman. These efforts failed. With the help of Genoese ships, the Ottoman besiegers captured the fortress and executed Junid with his entire family. By 1425, Murad had in addition annexed Mentish, bringing all the Aegean coastline of Anatolia under his rule. 3 years later, he completed his conquests in Asia by annexing the thickly wooded and mountainous areas along the Black Sea coast to the east of Samsun, and then, in 1428, occupying Germania after the death of its last dynastic lord. During these years, the siege of Thessaloniki continued, forcing the Venetians to seek allies against the Sultan. When they received overtures from the Duke of Athens, Antonio Oxiagoli, and from Theodore, despot of Mistra, the Venetians procrastinated. Their hope was for an alliance with King Sigismund of Hungary. These plans did not materialize, even though Sigismund and Murad had come into conflict. The cause was the disputed overlordship of Serbia. The elderly Stephen Lazarevich had, it seems, transferred his allegiance from the Ottoman Sultan to Sigismund and had, furthermore, promised to bequeath the Danubian fortress of Golubac to the Hungarian king. An Ottoman advance to the Serbian border seems to have forced Stephen into submission, but, in 1427, the old despot died. This unleashed a war, with Sigismund seizing Belgrade, and Murad retaliating with the capture of Golubac. The Serbian despot, George Brankovic, found himself squeezed between the king and the Sultan. By 1430, it had become clear that Venice could expect no help from Hungary in relieving the siege of Thessaloniki, and in March of that year, the Sultan himself encamped before the city. At the end of the month, Thessaloniki fell to a general assault. In the subsequent treaty, Venice ceded the city and agreed to pay Murad an annual tribute for Venetian possessions in Albania. In the same year, the Ottomans conquered Ioannina and Epirus. The occasion for this was the death of the despot Carlo Tacco in 1429, with no legitimate heirs. The despotate passed therefore to his nephew, Carlo II, a protege of the Angevin king of Naples. Murad clearly did not wish to see the implantation of Angevin influence in Greece, and found a reason to oust Carlo II. Carlo I Taco had no legitimate heir, but he had had 6 illegitimate sons, who had resided in turn at Murad's court, and it was, in answer to the call of the eldest, Hercules Taco, that Murad sent Sinan Pasha against Ioannina in 1430. Sinan Pasha occupied the city, but instead of installing Hercules, he placed it directly under Ottoman rule. He next harried Carlo II's domains in Arda, as a reminder no doubt that he ruled there as a vassal of Murad. The years after 1430 saw the uncertain establishment of Ottoman rule in central and southern Albania. This began with the seizure of territories to the north of Gjirokastër belonging to the Arianid and Kastriot clans, and then a successful rebellion of the defeated lords, and an Albanian siege of Gjirokastër. Ottoman reprisals came early. In 1433, when an army under the marcher Lord Ali, the son of Evrenos, entered Albania, raised the siege of Gjirokastër and destroyed John Kastriot's domains and Apos. John Kastriot was to continue to rule at Kruja, as an Ottoman vassal, with his son George, the famous Skanderbeg, a hostage at the Ottoman court. With much of Albania under his control, Murad next extended his dominion over Serbia, not this time by force, but by marriage. In 1435, he wed Mara, the daughter of the despot George Brankovic, establishing her father as his vassal. The marriage was the first step in the conquest of Serbia. Despite Brankovic's protected status as a vassal, in 1438 Murad led a campaign which first captured Borac in the north of Serbia, before crossing the Danube and making a devastating raid into Transylvania. In 1439, he took Zvornik and Srebrenica on the border with Bosnia and, most importantly, the fortress of Smederevo on the Danube, bringing northern Serbia under his control. His final goal, however, was the Kingdom of Hungary. By 1439, with Serbia under his dominion, and his eastern border secure after defeating Ibrahim of Karaman in 1437, he was free to act. The moment was propitious. In 1437, soon after the death of King Sigismund, a peasants' revolt had shaken Hungary. In 1440, Sigismund's successor, Albert II, died, leaving an infant as his heir. It was at this moment that Murad attacked, laying siege to the strategically vital fortress of Belgrade and sending raiders into the kingdom. The siege of Belgrade was a failure, and the defeat marked the beginning of a crisis in Ottoman rule. This was not at first evident. Civil war in Hungary over the succession to King Albert allowed Murad to launch a new raid in 1441, and civil war in Byzantium allowed him to intervene on behalf of the pretender Demetrios. Demetrios, however, failed to secure the imperial title, and the Lord of Transylvania, John Hunyadi, defeated the Ottoman incursion of 1441, and another in the following year. These small victories, together with the election of King Vladislav III of Poland as Vladislav I of Hungary, clearly raised Christian morale. But what threatened Murad most was a new crusading alliance.